Welcome to the Mom Boss Podcast, the show where motherhood meets business and everything in between. I hope you enjoyed today's show. Let's get started. Hey everyone, and welcome to the Mom Boss Podcast. I'm your host, Bailey Gordon, and today's guest is literally a warm ray of calming sunshine, and it is right there in her business name. Please welcome to the show, Jess Adams with Discover Yellow. This is my intro for everybody. Welcome. Jess, I would love for you to give us a quick intro about the season of motherhood that you're in and just being a mom, a wife, and all those things. So,
yeah. Oh, yay. Bailey, thank you for having me. And that was honestly such a nice testament to Discover Yellow. So yeah, I'm Jessica Adams. Some call me Jess. So whatever, I always tell people, whatever rolls off your tongue is what you can call me. But season of motherhood. So married to my husband, James, for 16 years. We actually last night, we're at St. Patrick's Day here. And last night we decided, we're like, how long has it been since we've been dating? And it was actually St. Patrick's Day that we had our first, we should hang out.
Yeah. And did you have green beers?
We did. And so that was 21 years ago. You're reminded in those moments, you're like, time flies. It's a whole lot of life. A lot of seasons that we've shared together, which is amazing. But he is my true partner in crime. We're kind of a Team Adams type duo. And so we've got two kiddos. We have Perry, who is 13. She just turned 13. So we're kind of entering into that season of teenager, although I think it starts maybe around 9 from what I remember. So that's interesting.
It's shockingly early.
But yes, it is. And I think, there's a lot of reasons for that, right? We just live in a different world these days. But so she's 13, and then we have Paxton or Pax, who's 10. So 7th grade and 4th grade. So it's a super fun time. I do feel the transition of the different season happening. Yeah. Part of that is just natural. And then part of it is, you're entering into those milestones. And so I think, the teens, I remember being a teen. Sometimes I still feel like a teen.
Yeah. I really liked my teen years.
Yes.
That's pretty fun. Those are really fun ages.
They're great kids, very involved. So we are a family of all the things that I think I used to look at on the outside and be like, how do you dedicate all your time to all these sports and competitive things? And we're there. Yeah. We are there. My daughter dances competitively. Pax, he plays kind of the traditional football, basketball, baseball, and it's pretty consuming of our schedule, but also it's super fun. My husband gets to coach his basketball team. We actually just got back from the state tournament, and it's one of those things that, I'll talk about this probably a lot throughout, but from a motherhood standpoint, I literally say so many times to friends that seeing your kids do brave things, seeing your kids step up, be on these teams, or even if they're independent sports, and learn from other coaches and, start to learn these life skills and just do something that they are really passionate about. I could cry every single time.
That makes me so emotional.
Literally, I see them doing it, and now I understand. Yeah. I understand now being inside. Right? When you're on the outside of so many things, especially motherhood, it is hard to understand how that could be someone's reality, right? And then when you're thrown into it sometimes, or you choose to be in it, you have a whole different lens and appreciation. So I feel like I live my life through a lens of curiosity just by nature, but this has definitely been one of those seasons where it's like, what do we have to learn? How does our family, exist in this time? Because it's always changing. It's dynamic.
And you've mentioned it. You are a learner. You like that. So I love that you are looking at it through that lens. Because I am not there yet. Did you play sports? Are you a former?
I did. I was a cheerleader. Okay. I played probably, traditional, early on sports. But no, cheer was from 7th grade all the way through high school. Yeah.
And so, from, you've been an athlete, and now you're in the parenthood part of that. Right. And it is really hard to juggle. I am not there yet. And I know that a lot of our listeners may not be there either. I think that's so interesting. How do you do it? I'm just kind of curious. I just have to know. What are some things that you really prioritize to help make sure that you stay calm within that chaos?
Right, absolutely. Well, I think that's kind of the cool thing of the learning, right?
Yeah.
Because you don't know what you don't know. I'm a very big believer of you have to grow through it and go through it at the same time. Those things are coexisting often. It's not that we have it all figured out and we're not expected to if we haven't done it before. So I think for us as a family, and even just I would say myself as a mom, the word balance is a tricky one.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know that
Is it real?
Well, I don't know. But what I would say is it matters. If it matters to you and your family, and it matters to your definition of balance. So it doesn't mean that it's going to be equal. When I think of balance, I do not think of this scale, whatnot. I have more of this more circular visual that there has to be flexibility. There has to be appreciation. There has to be delegation. There has to be this sort of team mentality. Just hey, if we're going to show up and play this basketball game, You don't do that with one person on the court.
Yeah.
You do that with everyone. You do that with some pre-organized plays. You do that with, some encouragement and motivation. So all of those same mindsets, I think, come into how a family can coexist in a time where, whether it's sports or other things, maybe your child is, into kind of performing arts or other things of that, or there's just a hobby that they're really dedicated towards, and you want to fuel that passion in your kids. It's so fun to do as a parent. It's expensive. So that is one thing to consider for sure. But again, I think they go back to the way the family communicates, what we decide, as a group is important. Finding times for, that sort of quality over quantity, and figuring out ways that even if we have to divide and conquer a house with just 2 kids, I think when you sometimes have more, I could imagine there could be dynamics of how do we really do this? But it does allow you to, have that one-on-one time with your kids, which celebrate it when you get it, because you don't always get it. It allows, as I said earlier, my husband just finished coaching my son's basketball team. Those are cool things that wouldn't exist if we weren't saying yes to this opportunity. And it's a whole different ride when you're coaching your kids.
I've only coached T-ball, so I don't know yet.
It's interesting. Or the carpool time, and thinking about those opportunities, whether it's just your child or you're picking someone else up, or the time where, really want to expand your community, because it does take a village.
Yeah, it does.
And I think especially, when you are a working parent, and both of us in our household are, whether you're owning your own business or you're just in a working scenario, whatever that looks like, there are times where you just will need help. These sports practices start earlier and earlier every time we enter a season. Commutes are different, depending on where you live and where your child is playing. And so I don't know if I have a great answer for that, but I would say is communication is key. Flexibility is extremely key, and approaching it in the mindset like you would the sport itself. It's just opportunities to, to get to do something really fun together and support each other in the process. So
absolutely. I think what you talked about, balance, it almost sounds like you have your own definition of what balance looks like for you. And that's really cool and a really interesting way to think about it. I don't think I've ever heard that before, that balance. What does that look like for you?
Right.
You think sometimes balance, like you see externally people achieving, quote unquote, what you believe to be balance, or maybe what you aspire to be, from the outside. And it's so interesting, like really have to turn that internally and find what that means. I love that. That's so cool. What a perfect segue into Discover Yellow. I'd love to hear more about your background in your employment history, and then what led you into discovering Discover Yellow. I'd love to hear more about that.
Great question. In terms of my background, what's interesting is I hadn't really connected all of these dots, and I'm sure if we all looked at our careers over the years, there are woven in either natural tendencies, things that you're drawn to, environments that you thrive in, just different skill sets that you have naturally, and then there are those things that are built over time that you just realize I have a real passion for that. And what's been interesting is I've done a lot of reflection over, different career transitions, but also getting to the place deciding to start my own business. It's why am I really doing this? Do I just think it sounds fun? Do I want to make some money? Do I want to try something new? There's a million reasons one could do that. And what I realized though is that when I was thinking about every career job, starting from 7th grade is when I started working. So whether you call that career or not, there's still life formation things that are happening.
Add it to the resume.
Exactly. And so what's interesting is there is an underwoven and kind of woven throughout element, which is people. People have been at the core of every job that I have ever either desired to have or had for a really long time, and just honed skills around helping to invest in people and engage with people, I guess is what I would say too. And so that started at an early age, but the majority of my career was spent in a large global organization, 50,000+ employees. So big, lots of dynamics going on, but working within HR, talent management, all things leadership development. I honestly, the way I look at that career really is having the privilege to invest in people and helping them to learn more about themselves so they can lead more effectively. They can really enjoy. We spend so many waking hours in the work that we do. And I feel like we should love it. We're not going to love it every day.
Right.
But in general, there's a lot to be said for really not just showing up to do the work that you have to do. We talk a lot
to get the paycheck and the benefits.
Is changing that mindset of it's not something you have to do, it's something you get to do. And I think when you can start engaging with leaders and teams, the organization culture has the ability to make a big shift when everyone starts to look at what am I contributing? How am I contributing? Why am I contributing? What do I get to contribute? Starting to look through a lens of people are human, right? We take ourselves to work, and we should appreciate and respect who we are at home and who we are at work, and then who we are at work and who we get to bring home. I would say a pretty steady career in terms of being able to grow within a large organization, wear a lot of different hats, work in a lot of different sides of HR, all very people focused, and working with people all around the world, which is just, I have a huge heart for just different cultures and just having the ability to connect with people. And way prior to Zoom, we did a lot of conference calls where you couldn't see people. I would say 80% of people that I worked with, I would never met in person. Which is very interesting, especially when you're doing people-related work. But it's, again, I believe in the power of a question. I really believe in curiosity and helping people learn more about themselves, because we inevitably are learning more about ourselves in that process, and we don't even know it at the time. And I think it's cool to reflect on. But really helping to make an impact in that organization was just, it fueled so much of what I'm doing now, but also just that 16-year career, especially when you do decide to start a family and you're faced with that question of, is it financially responsible to keep working? That's a real question.
Yes.
Is it where I want to be spending my time and energy? Because when we exhaust energy one place, we have to figure out ways to refuel so we can give it elsewhere. And our kids need it. We owe it to them. That's the role that we play. And so making that decision to stay in a career for the entire time that I've been a mother, it meant that I really wanted to be doing something that was not just purposeful, but like purpose-filled. And that was me. It mattered to me.
I love that.
So then that transitioned into 2021. The company that I worked for a very long time, 16 and a half years, was acquired. And if I'm really honest, I was a little on the fence of, what do I do? The natural response is keep doing what you've always done, right?
Let's stay in that comfort zone.
Stay in that comfort zone. And then there's this whole other world of, but what if? And if I'm also really honest, for about maybe 6-8 months, could be a little longer, prior to that, I had really considered what it would look like to have my own business. I had attended a couple of my own retreats, like going to a yoga retreat or to more of a wellness retreat. And really in that time to step away, I realized the power of being away from daily distractions. And so I started to weave it into what I was doing in the organization. But I was always like, what could this look like if I were doing something out of the organization? And it was hard, I'm not gonna lie, because the reality is when you are in a place where you've kind of grown up, for better or worse. When I started at this company, I wasn't even engaged, then got engaged, then got married, then started a family. We moved 3 different states. They allowed me to work remote. They allowed me to go part-time when my oldest was 18 months. And I realized, I do want to work, but I want to do it a little more on my terms. And they were so supportive. So how do you leave something that really is working? And it's grown with us. And really has been so loyal. The company was amazing for that. But my job ultimately was made redundant through an acquisition. And it was really probably the biggest blessing of a closed door ever.
Absolutely.
And I remember the day I looked at my husband and said, okay, I think I want to try it. And he's like, I support you. You have to. I want you to just try this dream. And I am so thankful. It does come, at a cost. Everything does. But it'll be 3 years in April since I then launched Discover Yellow, which is purely focused on helping women to remove, step away from distractions, right? We'll never remove all of them, but we live in a world filled with distractions. So my whole goal is to help people press pause, to create a bit of space. But to do that, we often say check out so you can check in on purpose. And I really am a firm believer that if you are gifting yourself even 5 minutes, it does have the ability to be an opportunity of learning, refuel, and reconnection. And so we do a lot of workshopping at retreats. We do a lot of time for really understanding what season of life we're in, want to get out of the season, and connecting in community, because we're not meant to do this life alone. And I've just seen over and over again the power of women coming together and taking this opportunity to check in and to, to kind of recommit even to what they want to be intentional about. Like, the reality is our lives move fast. A lot of things are demanding our attention. We wear a lot of hats, whether you are a working mom, whether you're a stay-at-home mom, whether you're thinking about being a mom, whatever it looks like. And we owe it to ourselves to think about what our refuel looks like, because we can't show up for others if we have nothing to give. That is what Discover Yellow is all based on. And again, just sitting on top of just an entire career filled with, a huge desire to want to make a difference in the lives of others.
Oh, I love that story. That's so cool. You're so right. Like, the signs were there. Your gut really wanted you to do it. And then the universe pushed you into becoming an entrepreneur. And that's so cool. And you actually, your shirt, if you're listening, you can't see her shirt, but if you're watching on YouTube, you can. It says pause with a purpose. And I love it. You are so full of these like little nuggets like of quotes. I need you to write them all down so I can like put them on my vision board. They're so good. Like I need all of these in sticker format ASAP. Yeah. No, I love that. You touched on a ton of things and I really wanted to get to all these. One of the questions I have for you really fast while I'm thinking about it is you keep mentioning workshops and retreats and things like that. How do you typically show up for clients? What does it look like to work with Discover Yellow as a female entrepreneur?
Yeah, great question. A variety of different workshops and retreats held throughout the year. And I like to offer them virtual and in person because the reality is sometimes it's just easier. Even if you are local, we're Washington Beach. Even if you are local, if the workshop is 30 minutes, an hour, are you really going to want to get into a car, find childcare if you need to, have that extra expense to come in person?
Yeah.
Sometimes it just isn't feasible. And so I like to offer opportunities virtual. I love to be in person. You can't replace it,
Absolutely.
right? But variety of different workshops throughout the year. Typically they're focused during times where we're transitioning in seasons. I'm a huge believer that they're natural times to pivot and recheck in, especially when we're going into summer, especially when we're coming into a new year. And it's not about, like all things being new. It's about taking that opportunity to pause, come together, have someone ask you a couple good reflection questions, reconnect with, what season am I in? What's important to me in this season? Where do I want to be intentional? Why do I want to be intentional? And that's a big thing because there are a lot of times that what will come out of these type of whether you want to call it self-assessment, self-exploration, self-discovery, personal development, people call it all things. Yeah. There's no one right word, but the reality is that oftentimes what people find is they might be doing something, not that it's wrong, right, but it's not connected to their why.
Totally.
Which makes it a lot more difficult, often. And it also depletes them of energy that doesn't need to be depleted because we live in a world we're saturated with, you could try this, you could do this.
Information overload.
Exactly. And even me, when I'm putting out workshops and whatnot, I love when someone asks me the question of, who's this really for and why should I attend? Because the reality is I think everyone owes it to themselves to check in, but not everyone is always going to be in a season where that's really where they need to be. And so I love having those conversations. I'm thinking about a long weekend retreat and our retreats are usually Thursday to Sunday. So it's 3.5 days of being away. That's financial commitment. That's time commitment. I do not take that lightly at all when someone chooses to do that. I want them to come and be able to invest in that time. But we do a lot of pre-work to make sure, why am I coming in? What do I want to get out of it? Because if we're walking someone else's journey, likely it's not taking us where we're aiming to go anyway. And we may not know that just based on what we're being influenced by, just by the fact that, what we're doing is good. There's actually a quote, it's not my quote, but there's a quote that says, sometimes we have to stop doing something good to make room for something better. And I've often loved that, especially in these transition times and in motherhood too, because our kids always need different things from us. Those seasons change. And
they change day to day.
Yeah, correct. Amen. And so it's
I don't want that banana anymore, but you loved bananas. I bought 18 bananas. No, I don't want the banana anymore.
My son once told me, Mom, did you not remember I don't eat peas on Tuesday? I don't eat peas on Tuesday. And I was like, well, this is great.
How could
today's peas.
That is adorable.
And I was never like a huge stickler of, you have to eat everything, whatnot. Try it, see if you like it. But it was just comical. I will never forget that dinner. I was like, thanks, Max. I love
it. Actually, that perfectly sums up motherhood.
Correct.
Right there.
That's exactly it. It's all about the pivot. Totally. So, so workshops, retreats throughout the year offered. I would love to be offering more of them, but I'm in a season right now. There are just demands that my kids are, their schedules are demanding a bit more of that. And I've also found it's interesting because, when you're in the younger years, there's a lot of energy around the modeling, the teaching, and not that you're not doing that in older either, but sometimes more of the disciplining, a quick kind of fix. And then what I'm finding now, even in the last couple of years, is transitioning into this middle of elementary and into middle school, is this real acknowledgement of the depth of the conversations and the curiosity. And I'm all here for it. I love it. I think it's great. But it can sometimes be like, oh gosh, a timeout sounds really good right now because that seems kind of quick in that season. And so instead it's, okay, well now we're going to go take a walk and we're going to do this. I feel very fortunate that I have the ability to have that flexibility to say, this is not only important, but we can carve out some time for it. But it also does come at, wanting to grow this business at a speed that is sustainable and not trying to rush anything in a way that puts me back into kind of where I was in a corporate environment, where a lot of this was really desirable because I'm a go-getter. I will stack my schedule pretty darn full. And so I often say Discovery Yellow is close to my heart because I need it the most. I think God was like, Jessica, you need this. And so other people do too. And you can help, right? Go create something. And we do. A lot of times we teach, we create what we need. Yes. I think there's a lot of passion and real just specialness in that. But I also want to be a person who, if I'm talking about it, authenticity is huge for me. And so like when I am wearing the shirt that you see Pause, the whole design behind the Discovery Yellow merchandise that we do have is, and this is not a plug for that, but you can get it on the website, but was to put it on, to remember, and to put that message out. So if someone's walking and they read, they might just think like, pause, what's that all about? You know? And it's not just pause, it's pause with purpose. Yes. It's thinking about how do I use those transition times to re-energize, to refuel, to check in, whatever it might be. So long-winded answer to your question, but
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, that spurred like 15 other questions. Great. I don't even know where I want to go from here. Naturally, I want to talk about the Mom Boss retreat that we have in May. And so I had this idea, and I have a lot of ideas as well. I stack my schedule very full. I have a ton of ideas, and I don't always get the time to pause or step away or remove the distractions to be able to be very focused and very intentional with my time, or like even work on something that maybe doesn't affect the day-to-day. Like maybe it's something that's really on the deep back burner, but I just don't have the capacity to take any steps towards to get it to the front burner, Sure. And so I had the idea to do a retreat, very simple, like, show up and we're going to work and we're going to get rid of all the distractions. The chores aren't looking at you in the face. Your kids aren't looking at you in the face. Or your spouse isn't looking at you in the face. Nobody is taking that time. You can fully dive in and get that much needed structure that you maybe don't have at home. And so I threw the idea out there. I had 30 people respond saying they were interested in something like this. And I was like, oh, well, okay.
It's not just me.
Like, all right. It's not just me. I will create this because more people want it. So I was like, I looked at a spot. I looked at Suncadia. So we're going to Suncadia May 2nd through 4th. And then Jess, she saw that I was doing something like this and she was like, hey, I don't know if you're interested, but I would love to be involved in any capacity. And I knew I needed to reach out to you. Like it was on my to-do list to reach out to you. So Jess is going to come and run some mini workshops within our retreat. I would love for you to talk about some ideas that you might have on what that'll look like for the people that are coming and how they get to step away and really focus in on what it is that they want to accomplish for that weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one, thank you for letting me float the idea.
Oh, I love it.
Hey, because honestly, my real reason to initiate that was I could tell when I saw your story, when I listened, that you wanted to get something done. And my immediate reaction to that was, she's going to be wearing a hat of facilitator and host. And Absolutely. I know what that's like. And I love that role, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you can also get a lot of things done. And I wanted to protect that time for you. So from mama to mama, from business owner to business owner, I was like, I think maybe we could, we could team up a little bit on this. And I am so excited. So thank you for, extending that invitation and allowing this to occur, because I really think it's going to be fantastic. Yes. When I listened to a little bit more about the retreat and just the real intention behind it and coming and not having all those distractions, it's interesting because what I have found at retreats especially is it creates this environment where you don't really always feel like you're even committing to everything. You're just exploring. And you don't necessarily always feel like you have to leave and have everything figured out. Where sometimes I think in the day-to-day, we pressure ourselves a little bit, where if we have an hour, we've got to get this done. If we have a meeting, we have to leave the meeting with, tangible something or other. Now, I love that people are coming into this retreat with something already designed that they're going to work on. But I would not be surprised if while they're there, it grows a little arms and legs and it gets bigger because they allow themselves to get more creative. They have the space to dream a little bit and not feel as pressured for time to figure it all out.
Yeah.
And who knows where that could go.
Totally.
Or a couple ladies are sitting around and they decide to collaborate and, you know, all of a sudden they come up with a different idea altogether and they might work on it and support each other. It's like, I just think those are the cool opportunities that a designated space provides. My hope, and what I'm hoping that I can help with for the ladies that are going to join, is to do something on the front end. So maybe a week or so, I think we've talked about prior to the retreat, that we would do a Zoom call. Really have everyone get clarity around what they're bringing into the retreat, not only in terms of what the item is or items that they plan to work on, but connect that to their why. Why is it they want to prioritize? Why are they making this investment to be away? What are they hoping to get out of it? Maybe check in on some expectations. Those can be huge, because we have to remember it is still a day and a half.
Totally.
Everyone works at
this isn't a week.
No, it's not. And even if it was, I can't tell you
totally.
the number of times I have people leave. I think the 3.5 days is, you know, a good amount of time. And hands down, one of the pieces of feedback, if you will, it's great feedback, is can we have one more day?
Yeah.
And I think we're going to be longing for that, because
absolutely.
it is going to be that protected space. It will be amazing what we can do.
Yeah.
But I think checking in and level setting on some expectations is going to be really important, because there may also be some things that we don't want to get down on ourselves when we leave. And if we didn't get everything, we might have got something else in its place. And so I think there is that, you know, that, again, I'd hate to use the word balance again, but I think there is that, you know, that connectivity to what I'm bringing in, what I'm hoping to get out of it, and then also what's realistic in that time for me. We all work different, sometimes heads down, you know, time. We think it's going to be one thing and it might travel into something else. So that'll be, I think, a lot of our coming into, and also a bit of meet and greet. Some of these ladies are going to know each other more than others, but I think it'll be great if we can springboard a little bit of just that connectedness coming into the time. And then when we get to the retreat, one of my favorite things is to have people commit to their time there, almost in a recommitment, because from the time that we have that Zoom call and the time that we all step into this house in Sancadia, which we're going to be anxiously awaiting, like, open that door.
Yeah, fling ourselves on the bed
a
alone.
A lot of life might happen, right? For some people, a lot of life might be happening. And so I think it's really important when people come in to have that recognition of, I'm checking in, right? I am checking into a space. Here's why I'm here. What am I committed to? What do I hope to leave? You know, kind of reevaluating some of those things, because they'll have a week to almost sit with it too and just really recalibrate. And then also talk a little bit about, how do I use my time well? I think it'll be interesting to maybe do a little, and we're still fleshing out the retreat. So I'm, you know, this workshop piece, but some of the ways that my head works is a little bit of, where might there be some sticky points for me? What do I expect already, knowing enough about myself that I might get here and all of a sudden it feels hard. What do I do? Is that a time to go find a buddy to connect with? You've got a space to do it. Is it time to go walk outside? Fresh air, creativity. Is it time to put my pencil down, pick up something else, and come back to it? You have the beautiful thing of doing that. See, in a normal day-to-day environment, we might not have all those choices.
You'd walk away and then you'd start folding the laundry and then you'd start putting it away. And then before you know it, your kids are home from school and you lost your train of thought and your creativity.
Exactly it. I often look at this type of work in this sort of personal growth and development space as, the beauty of it is, it's so much more about exploring. And then my hope is that whatever we all learn in that time individually and maybe collectively, it doesn't stop there. It gets to be one of those connectors going forward, that people leave this retreat and it's like, oh gosh, Bailey and I talked about this and she said she wanted some accountability. So we already have a time 2 Tuesdays from now that we're going to grab coffee, or she just wants a text to say, hey, how's it going? Like, those are the cool things that these environments
but no peas on Tuesdays.
No peas on Tuesdays.
No peas on Tuesdays.
I don't know. Maybe he's back to him. I haven't asked. I don't even know if I serve him anymore.
You're like, I actually stopped. I got scared.
I just thought,
PTSD.
At least it wasn't eggs. Gosh, those are expensive. Peas are cheap.
No, I love, that's so perfect. I love that you have gotten involved, because we are very aligned. You are, I don't want to I'm going to say this and I don't want it to sound bad about me, but you are like the next level of like where I would want to go. You know, like I'm not at that same capacity of like really deep thought. I want to get there, but you're very intentional and very like good about connection and making sure that you're connecting to your why and all those things. And like, I'm still getting there, which is why, you know, people need people like you. People like me need people like you. And so it's funny that you had mentioned like sticky points and like getting to that point. That's like on my mind. I'm like, okay, what do people do when they get to the point where they can't push forward? How do they do that? And so I love that you brought that up, because that was already in my mind of like, okay, what do we do when we get stuck?
Yep.
I don't know. I actually don't know. And that's when I do get distracted, and that's when I do lose that train of thought. And so I think that'll be so nice for people. Like, I can't wait, but for other people. And then they'll carry that over into their everyday, day-to-day life, and then their day-to-day business life. And I think that this partnership, I'm already thinking this is an annual thing. Like, I'm already, like, the wheels are turning. Like, I'm like, okay, the weekend before Mother's Day, every year we have a little getaway. Like, like, is anybody interested? Yeah. With Discover Yellow, the Mom Boss Meetup collaborates with Discover Yellow. You were so intuitive and so right and so spot on when you asked me, it seems like you have something that you want to work on. Do you want me to come and take that facilitator part off of your hands? Yeah. And like, yes. Absolutely I do. Like, I have probably 17 things I want to work on. I really need to hone it down, okay? But and that's why you're here. But I think that it's so special that you have that gift to be so intuitive to read people that way and to just connect with them in that way. I think it's so cool. I'm so excited for you to be a part of this. I'm totally making this annual. Like, the fact that we already have 7 people going, there's only 2 more spots left. The fact that we have that many people going a week after I had the idea, right? Like, that means people want it. It's a little late. Like, it's a little late in the game to get, like, more people. And I actually don't know that I would want more than 10. Mm-hmm. I think that keeping it pretty small is my goal. Yeah. But it is, people want this and people need it. And I'm super excited to have you part of it. So thank you. I want to kind of transition into, do people work with you one-on-one? Do you only offer retreats? What does the path forward for Discover Yellow look like? And just what you offer versus what you want to offer and things like that.
Great question. And I have to say, I'm going to say this because it's just in my nature to do this, but I think you need to give yourself a little more credit. Truly, honestly, I think we're all going to learn a lot about ourselves. Yes. Not being stretched by such capacity when we give ourselves this space. And that is actually the cool part. And I want to keep hyping up this retreat. But, if you find yourself where you're in a place where you're like, gosh, this sounds really intriguing. Mm-hmm. Could I swing it and make it work? I would say, figure out a way to do it if you can, because there is just so much benefit that happens that becomes a springboard. My goal with every bit of work is that it doesn't stop when we stop. Yes. And I think the cool part is there's an ownership on ourselves to do that. And if we commit, but then we have this community that gets to help us do it. And so we're not alone, because we're all going to have days where we're like, I know I said this, but I don't feel like doing it today. And that's okay. Yep. But it's great to have community where other people, whether it's through accountability or encouragement, those look different. So I just want to say you're up to some awesome things. Thank you. And, I really honestly, I feel like I'm just getting started, even getting to know many of the members of the community. Yes. So I'm also equally excited for those that are coming, because it'll be on a deeper level to get to know everyone. But I think there is a lot of intentionality with what you're doing with this work. Yes. And maybe you're not seeing it just yet, but I want to let you know I am.
Oh, thank you. Well, I think I do see growth in myself where I am accepting your help to come. It's like, I am not just taking it all on. I am allowing to make space for that. And I'm super proud of that. So like, the fact that you asked and I said yes, those are both big deals. Like, those are things that I'm like super excited for. And you said it, and I've heard this before. I actually just heard it recently, but clearing the path, like, you're being stretched so thin, and the only thing that I could think of is a balloon, like, it's being filled with so much air, and that's not necessarily like air that you want in there. Like, you're being filled with social media input or family input or kids or overstimulation or all the things, and you're being filled to the brim, and soon your balloon's gonna pop. How do you like let out a little bit of that air to be your best balloon? Right. Like, to be your best self. It's the only analogy that I could like visualize right now. I'm sure there's way better.
I was thinking like fly high, but then I'm like, that doesn't sound right either.
No, we can't fly high because then we'll pop. But how can we let a little bit of that air out so that we can fly high and beautifully and like all these things, and I think that this retreat or any retreat or the pausing with purpose and all those things, like, that makes space for the creativity, and it can kind of help not keep you from overwhelm. Like, obviously you get into places of overwhelm, but how can you find equilibrium and get back to like that balancing point of, okay, now I got to let a little air out of my balloon. Right. So I love that.
Absolutely. And that's the power of the pause and the check-in, right? So we're not so far down a path where then we realize like, oh my gosh, how did I get here? Or I'm so depleted that truly I have nothing left. We've all heard, put your oxygen mask on first. You can't pour from an empty cup. Yes. We can say those a million different ways, but the reality is it is true. Yes. It is very true. and we probably don't give enough credit. And we are, in a lot of ways, moving forward at speeds where sometimes we don't even think we're capable. And then we go through these seasons, we're like, I don't know how I did that, but I did. But if we reflect on it, I do think that we will learn that the sustainability of that is not in our own best interest. It's even, it could compromise our health. It could compromise relationships. It could compromise forward momentum in places where we're supposed to be making momentum. Maybe if we let that balloon just continue to fill that way. So.
Absolutely. Well, it's funny that you say that because I'm going to release a podcast episode, a Mom Boss Spotlight episode. And I had mentioned in there that we can't pour from an empty cup and you can't put on the oxygen mask. But there's like a second step where it's like, yeah, you have to breathe in the oxygen too. You can't just put the mask on.
Yeah.
And so it's funny because we always hear that. We always hear you can't pour, you can't do this. But it's like, oh, but there's a second layer, which is you have to breathe it in or you actually have to drink from that cup. Like, instead of like just filling it up. Correct. Like, and then it's like, well, what do I do now?
Yeah.
And so it's the refueling and the re-energizing, and it brings us right back to our Discover Yellow. Where is Discover Yellow heading? What do you do now, or what do you wish that you did more of, and things like that?
That's a fun question. I love that question because there's always a lot of wishful, aspirational thinking, which I think is cool actually, because in some ways it allows you to recalibrate, like celebrating where you have grown, and also know that you're not done. Yeah, like there's I do say a lot to people that I feel like I only know like maybe 10% of what Discover Yellow, and this is probably going to sound weird, but what Discover Yellow is. But that's partly because I don't want to put it in a box. I don't think it was designed to be created in a box. And every time I get to do the work, it evolves.
I feel that way about the Mom Boss stuff.
Yes.
I feel that very deeply.
Yeah. Okay, good.
I'm at 2%.
Okay, good.
Like, I feel like there's so much capacity. Yes, I love that. I love
and I think a lot of it is with it being very community-based, I think it is fueled by the community. Yes. So to some degree, we're not changing every single time. Right. But I love being creative. I love the fact that I don't have to do 2 workshops the same unless I choose to. If I learn something on a Friday of a retreat, guess what? Saturday looks different for us. Yes. I am reworking retreat elements the entire time that we're there.
Yeah. And it leads to that flexibility and the adaptability. And we're humans.
Absolutely. I love
We're not meant to be rigid. We are meant to grow. I love that. Yeah. And I think that giving other people permission to do the same and not feeling so rigid in whatever it is, parenthood, business, friendship, relationships, so good. You just said that like on a whim, but gosh, it's so much deeper than that, you know?
Yeah, it is so true. Because I think we can hold ourselves sometimes, whether it's, maybe it's upbringing, maybe it's the, things that have been modeled for us, maybe it's experience, maybe it's current circumstance, whatever it is, our own expectations. But if we keep ourselves there, I don't know, I feel like we're missing out. I think life, I know we haven't talked about Discover and Yellow in terms of the name, but...
I want you to go there.
I can do that really quick.
I was going to ask it.
It's kind of the Discover behind the Yellow. I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about just that conceptual piece of putting the oxygen mask on or filling the cup, those things. I think that's the difference between knowing and doing. And that to me is the actionable piece of the workshops and retreats that I facilitate, because even listening to this podcast, you're consuming, and we listen to other podcasts and we're consuming. But if we only allow ourselves to consume and not sometimes do the hard work, sometimes do the, the work that looks like, what could that look like? Yeah. And it's not all going to be for us. Like there are going to be a lot of things that we hear every single day that is not really meant for us or meant for us right now. Yeah. But I think that it's that constant decision to say, do I have something to learn from that? If I learn something from that, how does that change the way I do something a little different? Like going to a retreat, what does my re-entry look like? Do a whole workshop just on re-entry, because guess what? When you walk in the door and you see a sink full of dishes or kids are upset or, something's happened, immediately that time can feel like miles ago. It can feel like a whole week ago. Yeah. And you're just right back in it. So anyway, so the Discover behind the Discover Yellow, I love the idea of putting things into action. I love the curiosity piece of it. So Discover is purely just that invitation to say, let's be curious. People ask me like, who's your ideal person to come to a retreat or a workshop? And oftentimes I say, find me a woman who is curious, like someone who believes they have something to learn, who maybe is in a season where things feel really awesome, things feel maybe not, or somewhere in the middle, and they know that there's some opportunity to learn, or there's something that I can learn from someone else. Because we have a lot of content that is focused on going inward, having that personal reflection, but then having the opportunity to talk it out with people. And whether that's one-on-one or in, bigger groups or whatnot, it depends. But that's the discover. The yellow is just the pause. It came by way of thinking about when do you pause, and it's going through a traffic light. So green tells you to go, red tells you to stop, and yellow is an opportunity to decide. It's an opportunity to pause and say, am I going or am I stopping? And while you're sitting at that light, how are you using the time if you choose to stop? When you're going through the light, how are you choosing that forward momentum? So it's just a bit of I think yellow is a happy, sunny color, so it fit nice there. It has a conceptual piece that you could connect with of if you're driving or even if you're a passenger, you have those moments where you know that light's approaching. You make a decision.
What do you choose to do? Do you have any intentions or aspirations to do anything with parenting and helping people connect with their kids? Or, I know that we just talked about like this could go a million different ways, but the way that you talk about connection and even the way that you talk about your kids' sports, it was a question I wanted to ask you 30 minutes ago. I was like, I want to know, like, does she have any aspiration? Because I would love to learn more about that and how to incorporate that into parenthood.
So I love that you asked that question. Again, for me, sky's a bit of the limit because I think if there's appetite for things, as long as it's aligned, then I am open, right? So what that looks like right now is I haven't done anything specific in terms of parenting, but what I have done are confidence, mindset, self-talk, inner critic type workshops for more maybe 5 to 18 years of age. And those are great. Those are fun ways to kind of tap in. But what has been on my radar is the thought of in different transitional times, like things maybe going from like 8th grade into high school years, or you're at that, senior and you're about to be graduating. But the opportunity of that sort of mom-child connection and what that could look like. I think the reality too is there's so much of, I've even put this out in like free downloads or whatever on the website, but taking time where you have time with your kids and using that for being curious and intentional time of how do we, not just get them talking, but how do we get them learning a little bit? How do we learn about them? I'm a big fan of like the table topics questions, if you've ever seen those at dinner time, and just opening up conversation, but just asking and just seeing where their little brains are working is really cool. But in the same respect, these types of things that we might be talking about at a retreat, to me, we're human, right? There is no reason that at younger ages, small, simple things, they can still stick. So I think that there's definite possibility for that. So let me know. Let's figure it out. Let's figure something out there. I think reality though, just given like, again, where I'm at, current season of life and other things within our family unit, is definitely want to be doing a couple retreats a year. That's kind of aspirational and goal. I'd love to do one a quarter. That would be great. Right now, 2 to 3 seems like kind of the sweet spot.
That's what you can manage with your season of motherhood.
It does. And also I think where the business is. I would love to say that I'm opening a retreat and it's filled super quick, but we have to remember that this is one of the things about running your own business is learning what are the seasonal cycles, when are women really able to get away or likely to get away. So I've found that the fall timeframe is actually a really great time, especially if you have school age children. It also kind of invites that the season is changing, and so I might be in a space to, want to maybe settle back in and reflect and do those pieces.
Do you do it what time of year?
So I've done everything from September, November, and June. Okay. So those 3 have been times that I've just tried out. And again, a lot of it's learning, a lot of it's trying different places. Try to do at least 1, maybe 2 in Washington State each year. But I also love to travel. And some people, when they think about investing in a retreat, they want to get away. So we've done some out of state, like Arizona and Florida as well, which has been great. And it's interesting because as much as I've told myself that if I do it in Washington, everyone's going to be from Washington. I've actually had people travel from Florida to Washington, and from Florida, people are coming from, the Midwest. And it's just kind of cool to see, how these groups come together, which is also one of my favorite things. But then there's also the speaking, doing more maybe women's conference or other events and being a speaker there. There's whether it be actual like book of some sort or different ideas of what type of a book could do. There's podcast ideas. But this is the thing where, to what you said earlier of all of these running ideas. And I am the type of person, I didn't know this about myself. So I love learning. And I think just given the work that I've done for all of my career, really, I've had the opportunity to, multitude of assessments and different leadership development programs and kind of being saturated with learning about myself. I love that. But there is also then we're human, right? So we're going to go back to what is natural and what we're comfortable with. So what's interesting is I learned something about myself when I was setting goals last year, which was I didn't truly allow myself to dream when it came to goals.
Yeah.
And so I have really been trying to push myself in a way. It's almost like setting a goal felt like a commitment to me that I then had to have all the tangible pieces. And again, when I think about the work I've done, I've worked with leaders to set performance goals, and that's just how you track things. Yeah. So this idea of aspirational goals versus just strategic goals, again, going back to a definition, I don't think it has one real definition. I think we have to think about what it looks like for us. And then being a business owner, where do I allow for that creativity and that big dreaming, and then where do I rein that back in to say, okay, so what does that really look like for this year or in the next 2 years or financially, or all of those types of questions. But yeah, I think there's a lot of things on my radar.
Yes.
So.
Oh, I love it. I think sometimes for me personally, I think of like all these things. I'm a very aspirational goal person. I actually have a really hard time setting strategic goals. Like I have a really hard time narrowing it down. Right. Like, you know, picking my 3 things I want to accomplish today. It's like, just 3? What? You know, like, you know, like I'm like I have this joke where I like to half-ass a lot of things and not whole-ass one thing, which is kind of funny. So anyway, one of the things I think about is like, I have all these aspirational things, and then one day I'll just be like, you know what? A podcast sounds fun. And I'll pull it down from my little aspirational brain dump goal list. And I'll just be like, okay, cool, podcast. Let's do it. Let's make it happen. How are we going to do this? You know, and then it becomes like what it is. And I just started at the end of January. And so it's like one of those things. But I think that having somebody like you to learn from and observe, and like how you make things really intentional and pausing with a purpose, and like figuring out aspirational goals versus strategic goals. Those are all things that I think is so beneficial to the audience listening, and to obviously me listening. I'm taking away the most here, I think, but I think it's so fun to get to learn that. And I think these retreats are so needed. This might be like a taboo question, and I'm just going to throw it out there because I think, you know, as a mom or somebody who's looking to become a business owner of their own, I'd love to know more about financially, how you can survive or how you contribute to your family. Just, you know, all those things surrounding that. I've mentioned this to you before. I didn't know I could make real money as a photographer. There was always the joke of the starving artist, and, you know, this is a side hobby. It's always a side hobby. My side hobby, my passion project, all these things. But being a photographer full time and like actually making significant money to contribute to your family, how have you been able to do that? Are you there yet? Are you working on getting there? I know you're in a season where you're not quite doing everything that you want to be doing. So I'm just curious, like, where you're at and where you want to be, and just kind of all those things. I'd love for the audience to hear that.
I think it's a great question. And I think it's something, you know, in terms of checking in with ourselves and reflecting, I think it becomes part of our why in some way, right? If every time we are saying yes to something, we're saying no to something else in some way.
And a lot of times that's our kids and our family.
Absolutely.
At this point.
Absolutely. Especially owning your own business, is there really a schedule? Is there really downtime in some ways? I just went on vacation, and I actually was having a conversation with someone that I was mentally putting on this out of office because I grew up in a corporate environment where you plan for your vacation, you schedule it, you put your out of office in, you're able to delegate around.
You don't have a laptop with you, like you don't have your phone, like And
it's not that people don't stay connected, because we do. The reality is, yes, you're on vacation, but you're not always. We should be. We should check out. There's a lot of, a lot of research behind why we should do more of that. But I think the reality is that when you are owning your own business, I was telling myself the narrative of, well, if I'm not able to delegate these things out, have I really earned a vacation? Like, do I really have the ability to be away? What if an email comes in and it's an opportunity to further something work related? But then it's also like, well, what's the compromise of that? I go away for, the block of time, but I'm not really away, and I come back and everything's right there for me. And do I really feel recharged and refueled? So again, in terms of that authenticity of what would I say to someone else?
Yes.
I would say, do you have the time away? Are you able to be away financially? If those answers are yes, and you have childcare for your kids, go be with your husband. Enjoy those, 4 days that I got away. And
in
be
Mexico?
present.
You were in Mexico? Yeah, that looked really fun.
And be as present as you can.
Yeah.
Because guess what? All those distractions are going to be right there waiting for you. But I do think it's an interesting lens to look through sometimes, and we can probably talk ourselves out of a lot of things. But all that to be said, so transitioning, I'm going to speak just a little bit to this from a view of transitioning from a corporate world and a steady income.
And you just did it not too long ago.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like it's been 10 years. I mean, it's been long enough that, you know the difference.
Changed.
Right.
Yeah.
But so that became not only, of course, there's the personal element to that and the acceptance piece of, okay, this is going to look different. Do I have to make certain compromises? Am I going to have to get rid of, certain things that we pay for right now that we just won't be able to? Are we okay with that? Am I okay with that? And are we going to have to make different choices in our investments and where we're investing? So there's all those sort of foundational pieces that I think you make those decisions. But then there's the real emotional connection to that. And that also is not just personal. I think that also when you're married and when you have a family, it extends itself that way. So in some ways, you could probably look at it through two lenses. One, it becomes the reality for sure, and you have to check in on that. But it also becomes the fuel to say, okay, if I'm going all in, like what could this really look like? So for me, what that has looked like is finding the balance of still working within organizations and doing consulting. That wasn't my original plan. Partly, I think maybe out of some stubbornness, if I'm honest, of saying, okay, I'm kind of getting out of this world and I'm all in on doing workshops and retreats for women. And then there was the reality of, well, one, how much am I really going to be able to charge for these, especially just getting started? And is that really going to afford like how much I can be away, tied up in those? Is it really going to afford me saying yes of this being a full-in thing? Exactly. So what it looks like for me now is really just finding a comfort level with the amount of consulting that I would still do within an organization. And that can look like still very creative work and doing a lot of women's development, team development, specific leadership development, some one-on-one coaching, and then also the balance of workshops that I'm doing specifically for women and retreats as well. So cool. It is a little bit of a balance, but again, I think right now I personally feel really good about that. I think it doesn't define anything for the business, so it still feels very open, and it actually has been very cool I didn't plan for this, but let's say someone comes to a retreat and they actually work in an organization, lead a team. It's actually created business that I didn't expect in that way, or the opposite. Working with an organization and I have a leader who's like, oh my gosh, I could totally
I need more.
Exactly. And or one-on-one type work. So that's been, it actually, I feel like has been an unexpected sales funnel in some ways with a very personal connection because, the social media stuff is great and it gets you out. But for me, it hasn't been a huge return of someone, is seeing all these things on social and then they just sign up for something. Occasionally it does, but I think in a service-based,
connection and you meeting them in person and things like that.
Yes.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So I don't know if that answers kind of what you were thinking, but it's kind of multifaceted, but I think there is that making your decisions personally too of, what are my expectations? What's really realistic? It's not, for me at least, it wasn't a plug and play of leaving a 16-year career.
And then all of a sudden I'm doing this.
Right. And having steady income, building structure. Right. Exactly. 401k. All those things look different, but I feel fortunate to have a supportive spouse who has been great. And does it also come at some concessions? It does. And that's for me to also check in and say, okay, where am I at with that right now?
Yeah.
So I'm not getting to a place of being resentful, or I'm not getting to a place where I'm just doing something because it's obligation. I think there's a lot of personal journey in this process of owning your own business too. Yeah. I actually told someone one time, if you ever want to learn a lot about yourself or scratch every insecurity that you have, start your own business.
Oh my gosh, that is such a good reminder because sometimes I wonder what the heck am I doing?
Yes. And it can feel very isolating. I don't know about you.
It does. Oh, yes.
Because I worked in I've worked remote actually since 2012, which I remember when I asked to work remote, we were moving from Florida to Kentucky because we've lived a variety of states.
You've moved around a lot,
And so all with my husband, his job, different opportunities. And we've always been like, sure, it's the curious nature. Yeah, let's try it. But when we were moving, I'd gone on maternity leave with our first, and then he found out he had an opportunity to move from Florida to Kentucky. And so we were like, okay, we're going to do it. So I went back into my organization and said, I'm really looking forward to coming back to work, but I'm not going to be in the state anymore. It doesn't seem like that long ago, but there were not that many that worked remote. Yeah. Exactly. So even though it was global, and obviously there were people all over the world, but from a corporate standpoint, not as many. No. So we had to write a policy for it, make sure I had childcare, that I had an office set up. And now thinking, post-pandemic, so it's just a different world. Now, absolutely. But all that being said, I'm a collaborator by nature. I love to work with other people. When I started working from home, I remember getting a little concerned, is this going to feel very isolating? And it really didn't. I spent majority of my day on Zoom. I was working with teams and everything had a dynamic element to it. There was still one-on-one work, but it was very minimal. Then starting my own business, that was sobering to me.
Yeah.
I knew the work wouldn't be isolating because when I'm in workshops, retreats, speaking with women, that's all very dynamic and fun. But the day-to-day elements, and like we talk about, the strategic piece and the creativity, I draw more of that from other people. So even when you offer the retreat, I seriously, I was like, okay, I would love to come and help. Yeah. And I know that I'm going to learn something there. Yeah. Absolutely. Especially because it's a retreat environment. Put yourself in that room. Right. Yeah. Right. So I think, again, it goes back to the self-awareness piece, which is, I'm just a huge fan of learning more about ourselves.
Oh, I love that. As you were talking, my brain went like in a bazillion different directions. That's my problem sometimes is I'm like, wait, that was a really good point. You mentioned something about really the reason that I started this was because I felt lonely as an entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. I felt lonely not only as an entrepreneur, but as a mom who was an entrepreneur.
Sure.
And of course, going through the pandemic, like all those things, those led to me feeling so low. And so this is actually a perfect transition into the Mom Boss community and what we're doing and all those things, because that's why this was created. I have 2 questions. I think I'm just going to spit them both out at you.
Perfect.
Because I think that they both really tie into each other, but we'll kind of go in those directions. Okay. First one is you've moved a lot. You've relocated a lot. I want you to talk about the importance of finding a village. And I want you to talk about what brought you to the Mom Boss meetup and to our community in general, and what really was like, ooh, I'm drawn to that. I'm interested in that.
Great questions. So I am probably one who cannot speak more highly of having a village. Our family, we have not lived close to our immediate family ever, really. After college, we moved to Florida and we were there 8 years, 6 years in Kentucky, and now almost 7 here in Washington. And all of our family is in Ohio, pretty much. So having people is partly me by nature. I'm just naturally more extroverted on that scale, if you will. But what I have also realized is in times when we have moved, not only is there a natural need, like I desire to be in community, I need one friend. I desire to have a friend in that way and to share life with and to learn from. And I think when you're if you haven't started a family yet, there's an element of that. I think when you start a family, it's heightened even more because there's twofold. There's I'm now a mom, I'm parenting in whatever season you're in of parenting, and I want to learn from other parents, but I also don't want to forget that I'm me. And I want to be Jessica, right? Yeah. And I want to have, a laugh, not because we're laughing about what happened at dinner or peas or whatever. I also
genuine connection.
Right, correct. And even I think with our spouses and finding, community with other families. And so all of that has always been, I think I was just raised that way. My mom was one of 9. It's just my sister and I, but we've always been naturally extended into these bigger families. My mama had an in-home daycare for 38 years, so we always had, more kids at the house. But in moving to these pretty different places, Ohio originally, Florida, Kentucky, now Washington, it's sort of that element of, okay, we're here, and I'm very much a be where your feet are planted. And so in this moment, it's like, who do we have the opportunity to meet along our journey? And that has been probably one of our biggest, if you want to call them treasures, in all of our moves, because moving's hard. I'm not going to sugarcoat it in any way. It has its elements of...
like moving from Seattle to Bonnie Lake or Seattle to, whatever you're moving from, it's hard.
It is.
You're leaving what you know. You're leaving that comfort zone. You're leaving just the safety net that you've built and the routines and all those things.
You can feel very alone, right? You're the only one leaving and now you're new and you're getting planted. And I think the older you get, there is definitely something to be said of it is not that natural. I'm just going to run into these circles. People are established. They have their friends. I remember when we moved to Kentucky, and I'm not one to shy away from saying hey, can I come help you at a retreat?
Can I come over?
But it took me quite a while, close to a year to really, and I had a 3-month-old when we moved there and I started working from home, so I wasn't out as much. So a lot of different variables, but I remember specifically in Kentucky realizing the power of an invitation. So I'm going to just say this because it's been a personal learning for me, is even if you're not a person who necessarily would say, oh, I need a lot of community. The reality is you need some. We were not designed to do this life alone. There's a lot of benefit of not just being in our own circle and sphere all the time. And you never underestimate the power of an invitation, whether you're extending it or someone has invited you. That yes has the potential to really just be a big game changer.
Yeah.
And not only for you, like I think about the yeses sometimes. And it doesn't mean say yes to everything. That's not what I'm promoting. Yeah. Be thoughtful in your yeses. That's
Pause
a whole other,
before you say yes.
Yes, that's a whole nother episode. But I do,
that.
you know, yeah.
I'm totally doing that. Yeah, write that down.
I do think that in these times when you are moving, you know, you have the opportunity to you're planted in a new place. It's like, okay, who are we? What season are we in? What's important to us as a family? Where do we want to get plugged in? What does this look like? But don't shy away, you know, if someone's like, oh my gosh, you'd love to come to a meetup with a bunch of moms. You might just really enjoy this group. I know you're running your own business and maybe there's someone you're meant to connect with. Maybe there is.
Yeah.
Maybe there is. So I would say don't underestimate the power of invitation, as well as making that invitation. It can be really easy to, you know, get into our circles and just feel very content with that. And I actually, someone gave it to me and I have it on my desk, but we talk a lot about circles and creating these circles. And it talked about thinking about your friendships in horseshoes and always leaving an open space.
Oh.
And I love that. And I think I love that two ways when I'm saying it right now is because I had a natural reaction, which is that element of there's always room for someone to feel comfortable to come in. And there's always the opportunity that naturally people might cycle out. That's been my reality. I don't love leaving circles at all. In fact, I'll try to stay connected on Zoom as long as I can in a book club or whatever. Yeah. But I also think that there are natural transitions. And sometimes like when we're moving on to something, like we don't always have time and bandwidth to, you know, keep things
Can't
going.
Be everything to everybody.
Correct.
So, that kind of makes me super emotional. Because I have a horseshoe and I don't know why it's like over there by and I have this horseshoe. I don't have a horse. I don't ride horses. I rode a horse on a beach once. His name was Panini. I think he needed a Panini. He was very small. Anyway, I like have this random horseshoe and I really struggle with friendship. And I know that sounds silly. I really struggle with like losing friendships and friendship changing. Yeah. I struggle with those transitions a lot of times. And so I think that's so funny. And so now when I have that horseshoe, I've always wondered why I have it. Because like it's kind of like, oh, you know, there's the thing about it being lucky and like all these things. Right. But I think that is how I'm going to look at it from now on.
I love that.
Because it is, and like, it makes me emotional. Because that's why I started the community. It's so difficult to make friends as adults. Totally. And you talked about moving and relocating and doing it when you're older and doing it when you have a family and when other people are established and all those things. And not that I did that myself, but you know, I know that there are other people out there that have. But whatever transition you make from wherever, from high school to college, from college to adulthood, from sports team to sports team, whatever transition you make, leaving that space open and not like remaining closed off and like leaving that open to like explore those other friendships. Oh my gosh, I wish I would have heard this 10, 15 years ago because I have always struggled with that transition. Yeah. And I just had a podcast episode about it and I actually recorded a more candid one that I did not post. The vulnerability of like the friendship and losing those friends and like going into motherhood and your friends are not we're not all having babies at the same time. No. And not everybody owns a business. And not everybody is in my situation where I had 3 kids in 20 months. Or I had twins. I have a medically complex child. Like, not everybody will resonate with you and your situation. So you have to like really cherish those friendships that do. But it's so hard because people move away. Right. People have other experiences. Gosh, that is so good.
No, I love that.
That
I love
is
that.
so
you have it for a reason.
good.
It's perfect.
That is
yes,
crazy.
I know. I had this because someone gave me when we left Kentucky. Of course, they gave us a horseshoe, and I had it for quite a while too. At our church, I used to lead a table, it was called a jam just amongst moms. And so it was like a couple times a month, and you know people would come, different speakers, topics, the whole gamut of things. But really, just trying to help people have community. Yeah. And so when I moved here, I was like, I'm going to join. I need a table. Let me sit down. And then I ended up leading a table, but it was at one of the leader meetings that the kind of overarching leader gave us all the horseshoe with that little note. And it was one of those things that I thought, that will sit with me. Yeah. That will sit with me. And like, there's an ability to share that. I'm a big believer in the power of a reframe. And in any situation, like just knowing that you have the opportunity to take off a lens and put on a new lens, I think is doing that. Like I have glasses on. I don't right now. But
I thought of it as photographer.
Yeah.
So that's funny.
Totally. Right. I think that is one of those things, right? There are always going to be, especially when decisions are made that are not in our control, or something is changing that we feel, a little sense of loss of control on. And the reality is with kids, that happens a lot. And what I'm finding too is now getting into a season where, with the kids being more involved, some of your social circles are created for you by what your kids are involved in. And a lot of these close friendships that you have, you can't always give the time that you normally would want to do. And that can feel really sad. It really can. And it can feel a little bit like, oh my gosh, I feel bad. Or I see, everyone's also is able to go and do something, but we have dance or whatever it is. But at the opposite side of that is like, okay, what can I control about that? So actually some of my close friends, we recently, it was like September, we decided once a month we were going to just do a little book club meetup. It's nothing like overly pressured. Do what you can. We rotate houses so that way everyone takes a little ownership to host. But it's been a way that, a more core group of us get a chance to know that we're going to see each other once a month.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's something I want to be intentional about right now. And I have the opportunity to listen to a lot of audiobooks on my carpool. So, so it's a good use, but that is going to look different in all different seasons. So so that's a very, I don't know how we even got there from all the news and just reestablishing power of community. Think about your horseshoe moments. Don't underestimate the power of an invitation, whether you are making or like extending or accepting. It really is the potential to be a game changer. And then you had a second question.
No, we're going right into it. Well, and it's so funny because I have a problem wanting to make sure that like, this is what the people want. And this is what like they want to hear. And but this is so much more fun to me to just have a conversation and like not have it be anything other than sitting down and letting you share your story and your insights and your reactions, just literally conversational. And so I just love this so much. My other question, and it leads perfectly into this, is what brought you to the Mom Boss community? And what drew you to the Mom Boss meetups? How did you even hear about us? What brought you to this group?
Yeah, great. Well, actually, it was an invitation. And I think, those are the things that if you know that maybe even one person might be somewhere, it becomes a whole lot less scary. Even for someone who, I'm not really shy to walk into a room, but I do find in certain situations, especially when it's an after hours thing for me, that commitment, because I know it's time away from family or I have to juggle a different carpool or something, it's a harder commitment to make. And so I will sometimes feel like I have to over justify it, I guess is what I would say. And yet I know that in this business as well, a lot of that opportunity to connect with more women exists in these types of, out of the Discover Yellow community. And so anyway, so it was a combination of, Jessica, I think you would love this group and I think you'd be a really good fit. You're running a business, you're a mom, great, done. But two is, Bailey's a really cool gal. And then I started following, and I think we had an interchange on Instagram, like, hey, we should connect at some point. And then it was like, oh, I've got this coming up. And I think I had my holiday workshop or something. So we exchanged that, and it worked out for me to attend. And honestly, I remember standing in a room. Well, I remember being very welcomed when I came in. Like there was enough structure, but not overly done. And that was perfect.
Intimidating.
Correct.
It's just like,
exactly. Yes. And then I also ended up having conversations with like some really amazing women that as you're talking, you're like, oh my gosh, how have we never met before? We should be friends. And again, you leave those and you know that just based on proximity, age of kids, like you're not going to necessarily be able to do that. But what I think it does provide is some consistency, the once a month opportunity, like the book club I'm just talking about, to come and to be in a place with people who get it. And whatever that looks like, whether you're doing something fun or it's actually a bit more of a structured learning, it's an opportunity to connect. So I think it's cool. I think it's really cool that you saw a need and you decided to take it and just say, hey, what could this be? And look what it's becoming.
Yeah, it is crazy. I think this is one of my favorite questions because I like to know how people see it. I like to know what their experience is, whether it's like how they view it or where they see it going or what impact it has on their life. So it's such a fun question to get to hear. Totally a words of affirmation girl, but I love it. Thank you. That's really good. I think the once a month, I love that emphasis on taking that time for yourself. Moms deserve to take that time to get away. And I'm very aware that we have very limited time. And so the fact that people even come at all is so cool because there are ways that you can choose to use your time and you're choosing to spend it with us. And so I think that speaks volumes to the women who come and the vibe that's created. And so I love it. And I think I've been wondering lately, like, do people like more of a business structure? Do people like more of a social structure? Where are we with that? And so it's really interesting. And we talked about it earlier in the episode. I'm only at 2% of what I think that this can be. And I agree. Like, there's so much that it can grow into and little branches that can grow off of it. Yeah. And I think it's just a really fun passion project right now that can turn into even more, that can impact even more women and moms and all that. Okay. Wow.
That was a lot.
Wow.
A lot of fun territory.
That was really good. I have no idea what to do next because that was so good. Okay, well, I wanted to ask you some fun questions, some this or that, some get to know you, just super fun questions. Okay. I do also want to plug, we are going to have a second episode for Jess that is going to air 2 days after her initial one. And it is going to be more actionable. So if you want more from Discover Yellow and Jessica, I would love for you to tune into that episode, which will be coming after this one. I just wanted to throw that in there really fast before we move on to some fun questions. I wanted to know.
Can I interject really quick? I would say I would encourage you to join in. I know sometimes these ideas around what could a workshop, what does a Discover Yellow workshop or a retreat look like? They can feel very conceptual, especially if you've never experienced anything like that. So I would say, I would encourage, if you're even just curious, if you remember earlier I said, just a little curiosity and you're my gal. But if you're even just a little curious, join in. It'll give you a taster, right? This is, we're talking like you're going to order maybe a small starter at the beginning of dinner, taster, but something that hopefully gets you thinking in a way that, allows you to reflect in something that's meaningful, allows you to learn something different, and allows you to take something and decide what you're going to do with it. That's the personal empowerment piece. And whether you look at it from a lens of, business, motherhood, combination of both, I think there's going to be a lot of richness that's going to come out of there for everyone. So I would just encourage you. It shouldn't be too long. I don't think it'll be too long that we'll record. Who knows? We say that. Who knows? We say that. It could be that. Anyway, it'll be worth it, and I would encourage you.
Yeah. So, yeah. Well, okay, so now I don't know where to go because I kind of want you to just tell people where to find you. Just mention really fast, like where people can find you on social media and your website.
Great. All right. So we made it pretty easy. Website's just discoveryellow.com. But I would encourage to, if you're curious at all, the website is great, not only to learn a little bit more about me, but to really get a sense for a day in the life of. So there's a lot of just coolness, if you will, that happens in a retreat experience that I can't describe. It is such a unique participant experience, and that's why I love it. But it also makes it hard from a business standpoint to say this is exactly what you're buying because one, no two retreats really look the same. We do like to incorporate a lot of varieties of different elements of reflection and movement and time around the table and meals and all of those fun things, but also have those elements of refuel. So the website is a great place, discoveryellow.com, to watch a video, read testimonials. There's a past retreat section so you can kind of see where we've gone, get an idea of the types of places we stay, because the aesthetics, the space matters. When I'm choosing these spaces for retreats, there are things that I know that I need the space to provide for us, and it's part of that criteria. So I actually feel like that's something that I have learned over time, and it's just getting better. But it's a great place for kind of that knowledge and to be able to get that experience insight. There's also free downloadables on the website, so that's kind of fun. Some different question prompts and other things there. Recommended book lists. So if you happen to be in a place where you're like, I might want to learn a little bit more about myself. There's some cool books out there. That's all created from folks that have attended retreats. We're talking a lot about what are you up to, what are you reading, things like that. So that's a fun place in terms of like a resource hub. Instagram is at discover.yellow, and I would encourage you to follow along. I try to be somewhat consistent. I will be very honest in saying that social media is not a huge strength of mine. And when I prioritize things, it's one of those kind of secondary pieces in some way. However, the one thing that's very primary on social media is our Wednesday Take 5. And that is an opportunity to really have that midweek check-in, whether you do it on Wednesday or at some point in the week. It's all from me in terms of the encouragement to take a bit of a pause. I know that I need it myself, and I know I'm not the only one. And there will be a topic or a few question prompt reflections where you can just literally go through them quickly. If you want to take longer, that's great too. If you want to journal with them, that's great. But it's me doing the heavy lifting of saying, hey, here's a couple things that might be a good investment to think about.
Grab some water and take 5.
Exactly. Or grab a wine and take 5. You pick.
Do whatever.
You pick. But that is my commitment. I really do. I feel pretty passionate about creating that midweek reflection opportunity. And outside of that, hopefully Instagram is just a fun place for encouragement and just continuing to learn more about the community itself. Aside from that, I do have Facebook and LinkedIn as well. You can get both of those from the website. But those are the
And I'll link that in the show.
Perfect. Yes, that's good. That's good.
So I usually ask a few fun questions just to kind of get to know you a little bit. These will be super fast. But okay, so when's your birthday?
May 1st.
Oh, May 1st.
Which is great for the retreat.
Oh my gosh, we're totally going to have a cake for you. That'll be so
fun.
Oh
gosh, thank you.
That
You did not do that, but I do love cake, so I will not oppose.
We'll have
No,
cake.
when I saw those dates, I was like, oh, that's right after my birthday. I'm going.
Birthday trip. Yeah, birthday trip. Okay, this is a birthday book. My great grandma owned this, and when she passed away, it was like one of the things I was like, okay, I want that.
Yeah.
And so this was made in 1958, and it's just super fun. It's spot on for a lot of people. So I'm curious if it's spot on for you. Okay, May 1st. You love your home life, but enjoy travel also. You are naturally a stable personality, but can become fiery, even dangerous when angered. Watch your emotions, think before you act, and you can become an excellent example of self-control and moral strength.
Oh, I love that. I have goosebumps. I love that.
I think that's so good because you're yellow. Okay, let's talk about it. Not red. You're not discovering red.
No.
We're discovering yellow.
I love that. And it's interesting to me too, because I think that element of the self-awareness, self-control, those things, they don't just happen, right? Yeah. You have to be intentional to decide to learn something. You have to be even more intentional to decide to change something. Yeah. And so, I love that.
I love reading them to people. It's like my party trick. Like if I could take this everywhere with me, I would. It's totally my jam.
That's cool.
Okay, I'm just going to ask them some like rapid fire first response questions, like very quick. What's your Enneagram?
I'm a 2-wing 3 or 3-wing 2.
Do you have a Myers-Briggs, like an ENFP?
Yes, I do. And actually, I just retook it. ESFJA.
Okay, so ESFJ, and then A. There's either an A or a T.
Yes,
assertive or turbulent. So that's kind of fun. It's kind of fun. I love learning about myself as well. And like I'm, Enneagram 7, ENFP, like all those things. I like to know. You're a Taurus.
I am a Taurus, yes. And I see that when you said 7, I was like, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
And I don't know anything about anything, but I'm learning. I just like to learn as well.
Oh, it's great. And the cool part of that too is I think that part of learning when you actually do the assessment piece.
Welcome to the Mom Boss Podcast, the show where motherhood meets business and everything in between. I hope you enjoyed today's show. Let's get started.
Reminds you that not everyone's the same.
Yes.
And so it has that very human quality to it.
And why you make decisions or why you do anything.
Yes.
Like, it's who you are. I wrote a book back many years ago about my softball team. And my coach used to say that all the time. Like, who you are is why you win. How you do anything is how you do everything. Like that kind of saying too. Like, who you are is why you win. Okay, newborn years or toddler years?
Oh, gosh. I'm going to go toddler.
Yeah, it's fun.
But part of that, I think, is because of so my daughter was born 6 weeks early.
Oh, yeah.
I had preeclampsia. She was born 6 weeks early, so we had a, stint of time. She actually came home on St. Patrick's Day.
Oh my gosh,
so it was a very fun day. I know.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh. Yeah. Many years ago, 13. Yeah. Crazy. But yeah, so I do feel that me personally, we got her home from the NICU. We moved 2 months later. Moved states.
Of course, people do that. Like, that just happens.
Correct.
It happens
exactly. And then I started working from home. Then I decided to go, back to work in a work from home scenario. Then we moved again into a home from an apartment to a home. And then we had our second. And in all of it, I personally was not in the best health, even after having the preeclampsia. Unfortunately, it's like you get this lovely ticket and, you didn't see it coming. Yeah. So anyway, they feel very foggy to me in a way. I love interaction. And as much as I love a newborn snuggle, I love to dance with my kids and laugh with them. And, and toddlers weren't easy by any stretch, but I will say,
it's more
I think
enjoyable.
I felt in a better headspace and more healthy, just my overall well-being, that if I was going back, I'd probably go there.
Yeah. What about toddler or teen years?
Well, I'm just getting into teens. I don't know. Again, I would say there are cool things in each season. There really are. Agree. I'm already seeing, some really I think even in toddler, you start to see your kids become their own little human. Yeah. And you just start to see that evolve. And I do think that the older, what I'm noticing at least, but the older that my kids are getting, that when I see certain traits that they just naturally, like they're naturally compassionate, or they just naturally want to be a helper, or, you know, things that you kind of take your hand off the driver wheel and you say, you know, hopefully we reinforce and we model good things, but they're their own human. And when you see them taking initiative and being responsible and, you know, whatever, it's like celebrate the heck out of those things. And I think that just recently, even with my daughter, I'm seeing more confidence in her, especially, you know, at 13, that's hard in a way.
Well, and like dipping your toe in confidence. Like, because then you see the opposite sometimes too, like where it's like you can see like this confidence, and then it's like just as fast as you see that, I feel like sometimes it can go away
100%.
and so it's like navigating,
and us as adults too, right? I mean,
and
I do a whole course on the confidence as a mother.
Like as kids they have all this confidence, and then like, you know, and then it starts to kind of like
have you ever read the Confidence Code?
No, but I have it.
It's great.
I have it for the girls. Somebody gave it to me for the girls. Maybe I'll just read it.
Yeah, it's really. It's great for us too. I actually found it good as a listen because it does have, depending on how you retain, but it does have a lot of, you know, research back material. So I found it a little easier to listen myself. But yeah, it's great. It's great for us to consume and recognize. But it also, if you have kids, you know, especially girls in these 8 to 13.
I'm totally reading it tomorrow.
Yeah, it's good.
Oh, I'm reading a book right now. But speaking of, what book are you reading right now?
So right now, our book club just started The Last Letter, which so far is good. It is a little different than what I imagined, but I'm liking it. I'm only on chapter 5. So far, so good. And then, what did we... Oh, we just finished Mel Robbins' Let Them Theory, which was good. A little different than what we'd done before. Right in my wheelhouse, but not for the rest of the... Not for the rest of the girls. But everyone, I think, took a little something from it. And it was cool because it actually engaged us as a group in very different types of conversations than we would normally have.
What is your go-to recommended book for a female entrepreneur?
Oh, gosh. I wish I probably read more about... I think, honestly... I don't have one. I wish I did. I would say from a female entrepreneur standpoint, I have, from a business side, I've probably leveraged more community than I have books or podcasts, more podcasts.
Ooh, tell me
and I don't really know that I have a go-to podcast, but you know, it's kind of finding those like, oh, someone said, listen to this, or you're thinking about strategy in this way or whatnot.
Like there's a bunch.
So let's see, 4,000 Weeks, Time Management for Mortals. I'm forgetting the author right now, but it is a fantastic book and speaks very much. It's called 4,000 Weeks because essentially if you live to the age of 80, you get 4,000 weeks in a lifetime. 4,000 doesn't sound that much.
No, it really doesn't.
No. I'm like, how many weeks are we already into this year? You know, it just, it goes quick. So it's this conceptual piece of the amount of times that we can find ourselves in. One, you know, we need to check in, how are we really managing our time? We can also say, and I think this is very true in business, especially if you're working for yourself, of I didn't have time for that, I didn't get to that. And maybe that's true, but it could be that you're actually filling with fillers, and when something gets hard or sticky or uncomfortable, that's where you find all these other things to do, and then there's this one thing.
I'm totally going to read that. That's totally,
to be honest, when I'm thinking of that book and the retreat, that could be a really interesting concept of, you know, you get to this place and you're going to have these sticky points naturally. But if you think about it in the grand scheme of things, like, if not now, like, you know, are you really going to find time for that in 3 months? Or do you just need to say right now, either it's not important, or it's really important and I'm choosing to lean in.
Focus.
Right. So that was it. And it had a lot of life, you know, elements to it. It wasn't just business focused.
Okay,
but it was a good one.
Ooh, I'm totally gonna
that just came to me. I was like, oh, I do love 4,000.
Okay. I love it. Okay. And then just last question. What's your go-to family activity?
Oh, well, let me tell you what we did last night. So ours is usually dancing of some sort. We do dinner together. Is always nice to have. We play a lot of games. I love a game. And last night, actually, we had just gotten back from state basketball, so a 5-hour drive from Spokane. And we got out of the car. We're like, we need to stretch our legs. So we went for a walk, which was nice. And then on our walk back, we all decided who was the fastest. We didn't know. So we had an actual foot race that we recorded the finish line.
Amazing.
And guess who won?
Did you win?
Me. I won.
Wow.
We even raced twice just to make sure.
Oh my gosh, I love
our
that.
competitive nature really
it.
came out. So some sort of connector type activity, something that, you know, gets us laughing. We definitely laugh a lot together. So.
Oh, I love that so much. That's such good
it is
advice.
very fun.
Well, oh my gosh, this was an incredible episode. It was just so insightful. Like I said, you have so many good little nuggets that should be like written down for everybody to remember. But I'm just so excited and so thankful you took the time to share your knowledge and your insight with us and our community, and just so happy you're part of the Mom Boss community. And I am looking forward to how our partnership and relationship can grow from here.
Me too. Thank you so much for having me, honestly, Bailey. I feel like we could sit here and chat for a very long time.
I know, yes.
And I just appreciate, the opportunity to, a lot of these questions I'm already sitting here thinking like, gosh, that made me think. And I love that. I think podcasts are great for that.
Yeah.
I love more of the conversational nature of things because they're the types of things we might think we have a response and then we respond different.
Yeah.
And we're like, that's interesting.
Yeah. And that's why I kind of don't like send the questions in advance because I want to give you like the overall topic, but but I could send you the questions in advance and I wouldn't even ask them. I didn't even ask you like probably 6 questions I wrote down.
Yeah.
But it's like, I don't know how our conversation's going to go. And so I love that you brought really good information today.
Oh, thank you.
And I think this is so beneficial for our community.
Good. I hope so.
Thank you everybody for tuning in, and please rate and review the podcast on whatever platform you're listening to. Share with friends, share this episode. Make sure to go follow Jess on all platforms, social media, and her website. I hope that you guys get the opportunity to learn from her and connect with her. And yes, thank you so much. And please tune in for our next episode and take care. Bye.
Bye.